Looking for a great new music podcast? Check out the Out Loud Queer Music Podcast with host Kenny Fitzpatrick, brought to you by the Qreview.
We've got music and interviews with LGBTQ artists from around the globe. Find us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Welcome everyone to our it's been a while since we've done an episode. This is our latest episode of QTube, and today I'm joined by, right here, Alex from the band Yesterday's Youth.
Hi.
Welcome Alex.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here again.
So the band's been around for a few years, and you guys have been kind of clipping along at a really good pace, I would say, in terms of releases. And it's so weird because, as we still have to talk about the fact that so much of the world is still in lockdown, pandemic. If people see this in like 20 years time, they'll be like, oh my God, this is a video footage from the great pandemia.
Yeah.
But it's you guys have been kind of traveling through and traversing the pandemic kind of nicely by still being able to kind of create and get out there. Has it been much of an upheaval for you, I guess?
I would say in some ways, yes. Mentally, yes, just because you want to play shows, you want to be face to face with people, but no, in the sense of content, because it's giving us so much extra time to solely just focus on writing, recording, and things that you're going to see on a YouTube screen or listen to on Spotify, or those guys. So yeah, in some ways, yes, in some ways, no. I'd say for the most part, it's made us a lot stronger than it has more vulnerable or weaker. So
that's awesome, because I think that not having anything to compare it to in the past, I think that a lot of folks and a lot of artists and bands have felt that kind of like that heaviness to it. So it's nice that you guys have that positive kind of attitude kind of coming out of it. We jumped right into that, but first and foremost, let's just jump it. The band is Yesterday's Youth. I just kind of started right off the top. It's like everything must be pandemic up front.
Yeah, it's all we talk about.
The band's Yesterday's Youth. There's four of you. How did the whole thing kind of come together and get started?
How did it get started in terms of us all meeting?
Just and formulating the band. Was it one person kind of interested in a band, or was there a couple of you, or was it, were you involved in other things and suddenly you kind of naturally grew together?
Sure. Initially we were all in different projects, I think, and I started this band with a drummer and didn't know that I was going to go anywhere, and then saw that I really wanted to take it somewhere, and the drummer had other plans. So then I sought out all these different members. I found Jared, our bass player, first, then I found Kai, then we went through a string of drummers, and then we wound up with Eli. All of it kind of just through a mutual connection. And then I met Jared and Kai through Craigslist ads, as sketchy as that always sounds, but it worked out. So yeah.
And you guys are going to get, has it been 3 years?
It's been exactly about 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
And I guess I said, and videos are playing right there of your songs. You're a visual band as well as a very sonically I don't necessarily think of it as heavy as maybe some people do, but you are rock inspired, and there's elements of metal, there's elements of alternative, and there's elements of lots of different genres in there.
Mm.
When kind of coming together and figuring out that sound, how did that kind of develop for you? And when you kind of sat down, was it right out of the get-go you were saying we want to have this specific kind of sound, or did it evolve over time?
Oh God, it evolved so much. It's still evolving. When it first started, it was very much just kind of, we were all just excited to be with people that were interested in really pursuing this. And then, so we just experimented with all these different sounds. At one point, we had like a 2-hour set list of music, of songs that you can't hear any of now because we never recorded any of them, because we just wanted to go play. That was like the first thing on our agenda, was just go play shows. And I would definitely recommend that to any band looking to grow quickly, because every show feels like 5 rehearsals, and there's something you just can't learn in a rehearsal space or a garage or a practice room that you can at shows.
That's kind of a bit of sage wisdom too. I think that some folks think that some bands will think that they have to get everything down and set out.
Mm.
But really, you're right. When you think about those shows, and especially if you do like a set or a two set with something like an intermission or whatnot, a break in between, it
Mm.
does give you the time to gel, the time to really kind of come together and hear live, maybe stuff that you do want to change, gives you, inspiration and ideas in the moment, I guess, is
Right.
kind of a way to think about it.
Absolutely.
And there, as a 4-piece too, I mean, 3-piece, 4-piece, 5-piece, I think it really depends on the personalities and the passions that are in the band, and everybody always brings something to the table.
Mm.
Um, is there a certain, I guess, set out of who brings what? Do you all get into a room together and just decide, like let's write, or things are done ahead of time and then brought to other members of the band?
Kai and I are probably the primary writers. We'll just demo stuff, and we each have our own home studios. So we'll demo stuff and then send it to Eli and Jared, and they'll tell us, no, this sucks, or yeah, this is good. And then we'll take it to rehearsal space and kind of flesh it out a bit and mess with drum patterns and different things, because it's kind of hard to have like a drum idea that we wrote and bring it to life sometimes, because it's just unrealistic sometimes, or a bit crazy in regards to transitions. So we have to like have Eli kind of bring us to reality a bit. And he just does his best to just take what we made and then make it sound absolutely amazing. But yeah, I'd say everyone definitely has their spot in their lane in the band for sure.
It's interesting because you don't actually hear people or bands talk about that too much. The reality of, you may have something that is a really wacky or crazy idea in that space that you're not usually playing in, and then you bring it to that person and they have to kind of like check you a bit, be like, I see where you're going,
Right.
great idea, however that's
Yeah.
not necessarily going to work because of this.
Yeah.
um and it's great to have that communication to be able to kind of bring those ideas and then kind of flesh it out. But you
Hmm.
don't actually hear that much about it. Usually it's kind of like a conversation about how, like, yeah, I had this idea, I put some chords down or whatnot, and then I brought it to the
Hmm.
band and we all just kind of filled it in. But really there's a lot more to it than that. So
Yep.
that's nice to hear.
Mm.
um there's new music out. 2020 had music for yourselves, but 2021 seems to be really kind of, you're bringing on some strong guns. Already we've had Crown of the West, and now we're at Blessed by My Mistakes, which is the latest single. And there's I guess what I would call maybe um a kind of concerted, like a gel is kind of happening, especially in Blessed by My Mistakes. I feel Crown of the West, for me, you had a lot to say in that song. And there was so much that was going on at the time, and you had a lot to say. Whereas Blessed by My Mistakes really seems to be kind of like, okay, we're ready to kind of move on, and this is now our new direction. They weren't that far apart from one another in terms of release,
Right.
in relative times, I would say.
Yeah.
But they are kind of quite different in terms of, I think, the energy that you're bringing to it. Crown of the West really, like I said, had a lot to say in there. Blessed by My Mistakes is more, I guess, maybe reflectionary
Mhm.
in a way. How close were those songs written together, or apart from one another? And what do you see as kind of like, the difference from each point, I guess, for you as a band?
Um, Great question. I would say all our releases we have up now so far are all from 2019 is when we
Okay.
recorded all of those. So, I mean, that to me is probably the worst part of uh, being a artist is the wait time on releases, because you just have so much stuff you have to prep, music videos, uh, album artwork, interviews, all this different stuff, and you want it all to be perfect. Uh, so, but in regards to Crown of the West or to Blessed by My Mistakes, that timeline, Crown of the West, like you said, had a lot to say. There was a lot of anger, and a lot of just exhaustion. And Blessed by My Mistakes was uh, definitely definitely reflective on things that I've gone through, which typically isn't the way I usually approach lyrics. I like to really look at things other people are going through or things the world is going through and write about that, as opposed to always just writing about poor me, or nah, this again, or this guy did this to me, kind of thing. And although that's important and that's stuff that people can really relate to, it's just not the first thing that my mind naturally goes to.
Out on the course while the families they try to reach for trust. Well, that's the new goodbye. Be loved by men that refuse to atone. Not born and raised, and you're losing your home. Just poke the holes at the flag in the sky. He won't tell, and you know why. All right, can I get some help, man? Alright, I'm just doing what I can. Bet you sell me your soul while you steal my land. So if you need some resource, it won't come from my hands.
Being written in 2019, and politically, a lot to say politically about the world and kind of what was happening there. I would consider yourselves a band that is very conscientious about what's happening to other people. You don't, hide the fact that, you are very big supporters of the LGBT community, as well as Black Lives Matters. You do come out very strongly with, always not necessarily criticism as much as it is talking to the world about needing to support more, needing to show, more compassion and kindness. And I'm curious, as a band, um, when you do have passions like that seem to be, really at the forefront, how do you manage, I guess, getting it into the song constructively, I guess, without it overtaking, I guess, too much?
It takes a lot of thought, because our goal is never to alienate anyone. I think our goal is to just help kind of put a microscope on something, or sometimes the goalpost shifts a bit and the goal is just to relay an opinion or things we've noticed or things we've witnessed or felt throughout, say, a presidency or a senator's term, or what have you. And in 2019, things were so fiery, whereas music we'll be releasing later this year is after the 2020 election in the States. And I think things lyrically shifted a lot because we got back to kind of like, all right, now we're talking about economics more. Now we're talking about just quality of life for different underprivileged people, and kind of back to our roots of writing about just day-to-day issues and then just our lives also as well.
You know, the I don't want to call it an art. It's not the right expression for it, but the existence of politically minded bands.
Mhm.
We used to have a lot more,
Oh
and
yeah.
it feels now that we're getting back to that a little bit more, where bands are utilizing their platforms and their presence to really talk about things. I think, you know, I mean, back in the heyday when you had, and I consider that little spot right there as Live Aid, you know, and you think about Bob Geldof and the Boomtown Rats and U2 and Bono and all that kind of stuff. They're big names, easy to kind of bring people together when you have a certain, you know, public image,
Yeah.
which is fantastic.
Mhm.
But along the way, it seems as though a lot of just the day-to-day, the regular bands lost their voice a little bit, or it was just glossed over because, and again, this is the way the industry goes, the way society kind of like cyclically goes. It's not a good or bad thing. It's just what happens. But where all of a sudden the thing that's put out front tends to be a little bit more sensationalized, and that's what, you know, the consumer tends to jump on,
Right.
and it felt as though some of the bands lost the voice, even though they were still trying to kind of bring it to light. It just kind of like diffused a bit, from what was being kind of recognized. But now, and to get to my point, which is now lengthy, you know, now it seems as though bands like yourself are getting the opportunity to be out there again and really be talking and bringing it along with, you know, great music. And that resurgence, I'm curious from your standpoint, you know, being in a world of rock and bands, um, do you have, you know, like, you know, friends and members in other bands? Do you ever talk about that? Do you recognize that yourself about that becoming a stronger presence than it has been?
I think so. My opinion on politics just generally is that I prefer them when they're boring. I prefer when we only have policy to talk about and substantive issues, versus like the identity or I guess the celebrity of a person in charge. And I think we saw so many political or artists that were more political come out because we had this giant celebrity in the White House who took every chance he had to be a narcissist. And people were like, I've got the best material right here to write about, you know? So I think, and people obviously saw, I mean, anyone that I'm sure that plenty of people that you interview or talk to or work with that are in LGBTQ plus communities suffered a lot or felt really discriminated against or alienated during that presidency. And all of them suddenly had this huge, I guess, feeling of, you just felt like you had to say something. You felt like you had to you had to pull yourself out of the middle and pick a side and say, I'm not okay with that. And that's what we did. And especially being in Portland, that's what we saw so many bands do. Like when the Black Lives Matter protests were going on and everyone put up the blacked out pictures on their Instagram. It's like every band I knew out here had that or changed their profile picture to Black Lives Matter or to George Floyd or Breonna Taylor. So I think it's a great thing to see that coming back, especially in a time when we needed it the most.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with you, that it's almost, you know, and maybe it's a little naive for some of us. You know, when you have a chance and you're writing because of policy and things are not kind of, you know, structured right or whatnot. Those are yeah, they can be a little bit boring for some people to
Yeah.
talk about or whatnot. But the difference is, I think it is kind of what you're saying. It's like, you know, not everybody feels the need to talk about it because they don't necessarily feel very well versed in it. But when you see human lives being affected, and yourselves, and there's a fear that gets, you know, it becomes quite palpable when you think about. And I was talking. I was in an interview the other day, and they asked me, you know, what are some of the things that you are concerned with about the world and that kind of thing. And I said just how easy it is for a huge portion of society to turn a blank, I like to out of sight, out of mind, when it comes to like the loss of life. Whether that's Black Lives, you know, the Black Lives movement, or trans issues, or LGBT issues in general. Um, when you see, you know, that happening, suddenly it's like we all have a part in this, and I think we start to kind of recognize it a little bit more.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I've definitely felt like we, not like we're obligated, just that we wanted to participate and will always continue to participate in issues we believe in supporting or
The
fighting
so
against.
the latest single, "Blessed by My Mistakes," and I mentioned already earlier that you are quite a visual band, in the sense that, you know, it doesn't take a sound stage and rainbows and, you know, skyrockets and fireworks to make a really great video. It just
Yeah.
has to be engaging in some way, and your videos tend to be, even if it's just a stage, you know, like on a set and it's a performance video, it's engaging in a way because there's an energy that kind of goes into it. When you sit down to kind of like think about treatments for videos, is there a process, specific process in there, or do you go to somebody else for the idea with, you know, kind of some ideas of your own, or is it band kind of driven?
We kind of always have a general idea of emotion we want to relay. But with filmmakers, we always want to know their vision on what they hear and see what they see when they hear the song, because that's extremely valuable to me, especially knowing that everything changes once a camera comes into the equation. You know, people sometimes act differently. Everything just looks differently than you expect. You know, the angles are suddenly you only see your eye in some shots and nothing else. So you suddenly have to cater to that. I would say for most of the videos we have up so far, we've always been, I think I've been pretty involved in the process of saying, I want to show this. I want people to feel this when they watch it. So in that respect, there has definitely been uh, a lot of collaboration, but for the most part, we won't work with people we don't really trust. So we always pick filmmakers that we have a really good sense of or feeling about and trust that our work is going to turn out really good in their hands.
Breathing again, I'm finding the truth, and if I look at the time, I can't just look right through, 'cause that's what I am, a figment of life. So take my hand in your hands and help me realize,
The video for "Blessed by My Mistakes" has you all in blindfolds, black blindfolds, which is, it's, you know, you're outside, it's a sunny day, and, you know, nature settings are always look good, but it is those black, you know, blindfolds that is the real engagement piece. and when paired with the song itself, it's very creative. Was that your, or was it the band's idea for the blindfolds, or?
That was mine. That was my idea that I brought to Danny, the guy that shot the video. And because I really wanted to I didn't want it to be this big spectacle of a video, just because I wanted it to be isolated. And the idea was just simply to relay that even when you're in this beautiful place full of like amazing things that you should be grateful for, or people will tell you you should be grateful for, when you're trapped or feel isolated or alone in your own head, there's nothing that can make you feel better or feel like you've got everything you need sometimes. And I think the idea was to relay that, like, look, all of us are here together in this amazing place we could be having a great time in, but we're alone in this moment because we're trapped in this depression or anxiety or all these different plethora of things people deal with. And I think it was kind of just point out that it can be really naive to just say like, oh, well, you have this, so why are you, I don't get why you're depressed. I don't get why you have nothing to be sad about.
You're again, with as a band, you tend to be quite conscientious and thoughtful about issues like that. And it's not just about making a song or making a video that taps into that or brings light to it. It's about almost an educational piece, like informing the viewer and the audience why, which I think is really great, that there's a lot of thought gone into the process.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely shows that you're a creative person, and one of the things that also shows that you're a creative person is not only are you fronting this band and you're lead singer of the band, but you're also an actor. You dabble in the arts and on screen. How is that, how do you balance that, and how is the acting side of things shaping up for you?
I've said before that I think any artist or person could benefit a lot from taking an acting class, just because I think it gets you so out of your shell. It helps you resonate with people's approaches to things. It helps you be more empathetic, and it helps you just learn how to let some things go and how to really cope with certain emotions. Sometimes every acting class I've ever taken has been therapeutic. I'd say balancing the two is fairly easy because they're kind of the same ballpark, really, in regards to kind of how the process works. Like, you write something, you prep for it, and then you go and you shoot it, and it kind of all leads up to that. But I only recently just got back into pursuing acting when I'm not working on the band, because in 2017, I was working on projects left and right. And the reason I backed out is because so many projects I worked on just never saw the light of day. They would promise you, I guess, like a budget was coming through, or editors really had this, and then it just disappeared. So now I feel more confident in that I have something I love working on, and I is always going somewhere. I could be assured of that because we're kind of in control of that, and we're just going to keep pushing it forward. So I've always loved acting, and it's something I feel brings a lot to our videos if I feel comfortable with performing the way we do. And acting in other people's projects is only going to make that easier and easier. So I think that's part of the reason of going back to it, but balancing it all in all, really, to me, isn't that hard.
That's, I mean, what you bring to light there is actually really good advice for anybody that's out there, about how, even in situations like this, but also in music video or also in stage performance, an acting class or to kind of get you out of that shell, and how you can find some of those tricks to get you out of your shell, can take you a long way. It could be the difference between you feeling that you've done, the best that you could on stage or on film, versus you questioning yourself maybe a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Do you have projects lined up? Should we be bracing for the silver screen, and you?
I've got a couple photo shoots lined up, and then I've got a film I just got cast in that is an LGBT project. So people that completely are allies, and the characters are LGBT members, and uh, very they make that very clear in the script as well, um, which personally I love. And that I can't say when that's going to be out. I'm not really sure yet. We're at this point in time, we're just in pre-production and just going over the scripts and read throughs and things like that. I think with how much I do with the band, I'll probably just be taking it one project at a time. So I'm not juggling too much. But yeah, it's exciting to just have started and already have paying gigs lined up that I can kind of work with, because I made a lot of connections in Portland with a lot of filmmakers. So it's exciting.
That I think it's exciting too. I think it's, we'll have to keep an eye out for it to see when it starts to kind of come through and tap you into that and find out some details later on down the road. Everything that's going on with the band, I think is fantastic. I think that the music stands for itself, but I also think that you guys just have a strong work ethic, but you also have a strong, I guess human ethic is a great way to put it, behind you, as a foursome, as a band, and as a presence in music. So I think that is fantastic, and I think it's great to be able to introduce more audiences and more listeners to what I think is the kind of music that we need to have right now. So thank you for that.
Thank you. That means a lot. I think that's always been kind of the mark, is writing something that can mean a lot to people, or people that I think the goal is just, if one person messages us or me and says, this song really did this for me, this song really meant a lot to me, it's like the job is already done. It's already, that's what I do it for, at least. And that's the most special part about being an artist or a musician, is the connection with people.
Well, I know that the rest of 2021, as far as I understand, we're going to hear a lot more music, but we're going to see a lot more of you as well, videos and that kind of thing. And it sounds as though you, from my understanding, you have a pretty packed year ahead of you.
Yeah. So we just spent all of last year pretty much recording and writing and releasing a few songs here and there. This year is now just all geared toward releases and bigger releases, with more music for sure, as opposed to just one song every couple months. So that's something to look forward to, not just for listeners, but for us as well, because doing the singles game is good, and it really helps you focus just on one song and kind of give it the life it deserves to live, and gives it the air to breathe. But we really want to release more kind of like cohesive packages, or more lengthier projects. So we're really excited to be doing that this year.
Well, that's awesome. I look forward to it, and I'm sure all your fans do as well. Speaking of which, where can everybody find you online?
Oh man, so many places. Let's see. On YouTube, you can find us at Yesterday's Youth. On Spotify, Yesterday's Youth. On Instagram, you can find us at Yesterday's Youth Music. We've got a TikTok also under Yesterday's Youth. At some point, we'll get into Twitch and streaming and all that, but that's in the future. But if you want to find us, you can also find us under Yesterday's Youth on there. Facebook, Twitter.
Website.
I think pretty. We have a merch site on Teespring that you can find us under Yesterday's Youth, and all these things. If you want it to be easy, we have our link tree in our bio on Instagram. You can just click that and find any of which platform you desire to utilize to listen to us or watch us.
That is awesome, because I think people need to go and embrace all of it. They need to go and embrace all of it. Thank you so much for joining me today. This has been fantastic, and I seriously, I can't wait to see what comes next. And I just know that this is going to be just a banner year for you and the band.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to share all of it.